Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Dennis Mattern with Creative One. I would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join me and our featured speaker to discuss a conversation, to discuss a topic that I think is so super relevant with what's going on in today's political environment, today's tax environment, today's IRS climate. And we're going to talk about the mega backdoor Roth IRA conversion strategy. That is a mouthful. Now, through the course of today's conversation, we're going to do a couple things. So we've got a featured expert that's going to be joining us here in just a second. His name is Brendan Payne. He's with Delaware Life, and he's going to walk us through this concept. But, one of the things that I want to ask first and foremost of you, I'm curious about you, about how familiar you are with the backdoor Roth conversion concept. So here's what I've got. I've got a question for you, and I'm going to ask you, just take a second. This is just for little academic research here, but how familiar are you with the backdoor Roth conversion concept? So here's your choices. You're very familiar, and in fact, you routinely do them. You're familiar with the concept, but you've never implemented it. You've got a rough idea, or it's a brand new concept to you. Now, through the course of today's conversation, you're going to have the ability to participate. If you look over to the right side of your screen, there's a chat box and there's a Q&A box. If you've got questions, we'll do a little Q&A at the end. I'm kind of springing that on Brandon here. I forgot to mention that to him, but we'll take some questions. We'll keep it brief. But if you've got questions, the chat box is public. Everybody on here will see you and see your question. So if you're feeling bashful, if you use the Q&A box, only I see that, and I will ask Brendan the question. Now, without further ado, and in fact, looking at the results, it feels about right to me. It feels about right to me that most people, if we were to divide this up, most people are familiar with the concept, but only a select few of you have implemented the concept with clients. And whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, one thing we can all agree on is this. There's a lot of things that we're paying for that eventually the bill is going to come due on. And for our clients, being able to provide them with some strategies where, they're okay with paying their fair share of taxes, but they don't want to pay more than that. And we have ideas and strategies that you and we can present to them. So with that being said, it is my pleasure to introduce Brendan Payne. Brendan, I know you're out there. I'm going to go ahead and pop your slides up on the screen. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you. And in fact, I'm going to drop my camera off so I don't distract anybody.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And as Dennis mentioned, we're going to talk about the mega backdoor Roth IRA conversion strategy. But first, I'll give you a little bit of background about Delaware Life and myself. Delaware Life may be a newer name to you branding-wise, but we have a more than half-century history of success in the annuity industry. If you remember the old Sun Life of Canada, Sun Life Financial of Canada, they stopped doing business in the United States in 2014. A lot of because of regulations, and it's difficult to do business as a financial company in the United States from Canada. But Delaware Life came in at that point, bought up their old book of business, and have been selling annuities under our branding name, Delaware Life, for the last 7+ years. We're one of the top fixed index and fixed annuity sellers in the industry. So I hope you've seen our rates come across your desk. We consistently have some of the highest and best rates available. And we're also in the variable annuity space as well. Myself, I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. I'm part of the national sales consulting team here at Delaware Life. We're the advanced strategies arm of our firm. So we handle the more complex, the more high net worth, the more, for lack of a better word, interesting cases, unusual cases that may come across your desk from time to time. My background is I've been in the annuity industry for about a decade. I'm a licensed attorney in Colorado. I have an LLM in taxation. So my areas of interest, my area of expertise are in things like tax mitigation, estate planning, working with trusts, IRA rules, qualified plans, clients who are selling a business or a farm or a ranch and how to do that tax efficiently. And my team is available to help you one of two ways. First, proactively, like we're doing today, sharing with you some information and some sales ideas that you may be unfamiliar with. And second, we're a reactive resource as well. If you ever have any questions about complex cases, or if you ever have a situation come across your desk where you're not exactly sure what the answer is and you're not exactly sure who to call first, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to hop on the line and provide you with a couple solutions, a couple of strategies. To that end, our firm has developed what's called the Income Planning Institute. It has different presentations along the fields of risk, distribution, and tax to help you, the financial professional, become a income planning expert in your practice. In addition to that, we've also come up with what we call quick hit ideas. The one we're sharing today, the mega backdoor Roth idea, is one of those ideas. So without further delay, let's get to it. We're going to cover 6 things today. This looks like a lot, but we're going to start at the beginning of IRA rules and slowly work our way up through Roth IRA conversions, then backdoor Roth IRA conversions, then 401k rules, and then that all leads us up to how we can put together this mega backdoor Roth IRA conversion idea. And this truly is something that can help your high net worth clients really be able to save a lot of tax-free money that they can convert into tax-free income in retirement, and a great way for you to bring assets onto your book of business very quickly. So first, we will start with the basics. I always like to start at the beginning, and this is what we'll start with: some basic traditional IRA rules. So in order for anyone to contribute to a traditional IRA, they must have earned income. And earned income is income that's earned through active pursuits. So we're talking about salary, wages, tips, bonuses, commissions, anything like that. But we're not, passive income does not count for earned income. People can contribute up to $6,000 a year if they're under age 50, an additional $1,000 for $7,000 total if they're over the age of 50. And people can make contributions at any age. This is a rule that changed recently, about 1.5 years ago, in January of 2020, when the Secure Act went into effect. Previously, you could only make contributions up until 70 and a half. Now that has gone away. As long as a client has earned income, they can always make a contribution to their traditional IRA. And contributions to a traditional IRA are deductible up to certain adjusted gross income thresholds. But if your clients earn more than those AGI thresholds, they can still make contributions to a traditional IRA. They just won't be considered after-tax contributions and be non-deductible. In a traditional IRA, assets grow tax-deferred, and clients are forced to start taking withdrawals from their traditional IRA at age 72. These are called RMDs, or required minimum distributions. And this was a change as well with the Secure Act from 1.5 years ago, as the RMD age increased from age 70 and a half to age 72. So that was certainly a benefit for many clients out there. And the rationale behind that change was longevity in this country. Clients are living longer. So Congress decided they wanted to give clients the ability to delay those RMDs at least a couple more years. The benefit to traditional IRAs is this is a way for clients to grow their retirement savings tax deferred, and a way to help you add assets to your AUM. And just to give you an example, while $6,000 per year or $7,000 per year doesn't necessarily sound like a lot on its face, if you had 8 married couples over the age of 50, so 16 total clients, and they maximize their $7,000 contribution to their IRA each year, that's nearly $100,000 in brand new AUM that you can bring onto your book of business from your existing clients. So no prospecting needed. Just to give you an example of how quickly this can, these yearly or annual contributions can help grow your book of business. Now, Roth IRAs, a lot of similarities to traditional IRAs, but some very important differences. First, you must have earned income, same rules as a traditional IRA. Second, the contribution limits are the same. And it's important to keep in mind that these contribution limits are aggregated between Roth and traditional IRAs. So clients can only contribute $6,000 or $7,000 across both a Roth and a traditional. They can't put $6,000 or $7,000 into traditional and $6,000 and $7,000 into a Roth. Contributions can be made at any age, but there are very strict AGI limitations on contributions. And what I mean by that is once your client hits certain AGI thresholds, they cannot make a direct contribution to a Roth at all. And all Roth contributions are funded with after-tax money, meaning there is no upfront tax deduction for making a contribution to a Roth. And the two main differences when it comes to Roth are withdrawals from a Roth are going to be tax-free, and there are never any RMDs on Roth IRAs. So that makes a Roth IRA very compelling for clients when they can see that if they take the upfront hit today of making an after-tax contribution to a Roth, they can allow that money to grow tax-free for potentially decades and then withdraw it tax-free once they are in retirement, or they never have to withdraw it, and they can leave it as a tax-free death benefit, essentially, to their heirs. As I mentioned a moment ago, there are strict AGI limitations on being able to make a direct contribution to a Roth IRA. But there are some high earners who want to get money into Roth IRAs, but cannot do so with direct contributions. So what they turn to a lot of times is what's known as a Roth conversion. And this simply means converting traditional IRA assets to a Roth IRA. And to do this, it simply is like adding whatever amount you convert from the traditional IRA to your taxable income in the year of conversion. So if you have $100,000 in a traditional IRA and you want to convert that to a Roth IRA, that $100,000 is $100,000 of taxable income to the client in the year of the conversion. Now, clients can do full conversions, fully convert their traditional IRA, or if that's too onerous for them from a tax perspective, they can do partial conversions. So they can take that $100,000, for example, and convert $20,000 a year over a 5-year period. Additionally, if your clients are interested in a Roth conversion, maybe you can match that up in a year where they have a large deduction, like an unusually large charitable contribution, for example. So if you have clients who have been waiting for the right year to make that contribution to their alma mater where a dormitory is now going to be named after them, maybe that's the year to do the Roth conversion to match up that taxable income from the Roth conversion to the deduction. A more common scenario is if you're working with clients who are small business owners. If they have a trade or business expense, you can match that up to try to cancel out the Roth conversion income. And of course, the benefit to this is now that it's a Roth IRA, no RMDs and tax-free withdrawals once they hit retirement. Taking the Roth conversion idea to the next step, this is where the backdoor Roth idea comes into play. And the best way to describe a backdoor Roth is to walk through an example. So let's say you have a client, they're age 45 and they are single. They earn $350,000 a year from their employer. And this means, and they have access to a 401k through their employer, which they make contributions to. So this means that the client is well over the threshold to be able to make a direct Roth IRA contribution. It's also important to note that this client has no other traditional IRA assets. So your client makes their max contribution of $6,000 into a traditional IRA, and that contribution is non-deductible because they are also over the deductibility threshold for traditional IRA contributions. That client can then immediately convert that $6,000 to a Roth IRA, and there's no taxation on that because there was no deduction on making the initial contribution to the traditional IRA. And now that client has a $6,000 Roth IRA that is ready to grow tax-free. And your client can do this year after year after year. So adding $6,000 a year, $6,000 a year, $6,000 a year, eventually getting it bumped up to $7,000 a year. And the IRS every couple of years increases those contribution limits, usually by about $500. So those limits should go up. It hasn't gone up in the last couple of years, but I think we can expect to see that go up sometime in the next 3 to 4 years. But a couple things that are important to keep in mind when we're looking at this backdoor Roth contribution, and one thing I really want to point out here is in this example, this client had no other traditional IRA assets. That's important because whenever there is a Roth conversion from a traditional IRA to a Roth, it's always a pro rata conversion of deductible contributions and non-deductible contributions in that traditional IRA. So let me change this example just a little bit to show you how that would work. Let's say this client, instead of having no traditional IRA assets, they had $100,000 in deductible assets that were already in an IRA, and then they made a $6,000 non-deductible contribution. They are not able to just convert that $6,000 non-deductible amount. They'd have to do a pro rata conversion of $6,000, meaning about 97, 98% of that $6,000 being converted would be from deductible contributions, and about 2% or 3% would be non-deductible contributions. So 97 or 98% of that conversion would be taxable. A couple of roadblocks, as I just mentioned, as I just illustrated with that last example, aggregating all of those traditional IRA assets into a pro rata conversion. And the other potential roadblock is you can only convert $6,000 or $7,000 per year. So it could take years, if not decades, to really be able to grow that Roth IRA through just these backdoor Roth conversions. So the question becomes, is there a way to make larger Roth contributions each year and not have to aggregate them with prior traditional IRA deductible contributions? And the answer, of course, to that is yes. If you look at the title of this presentation, that will give you a spoiler alert as to yes, and we're going to talk about that with the next step of this strategy being the mega backdoor Roth IRA conversion. But before that, we have to do a brief primer on some basic 401k rules. So 401ks, they're a type of defined contribution plan created in the 70s when ERISA laws and ERISA rules were first enacted by Congress. And 401k rules have strict contribution limits, known as 415 limits. And for 2021, the maximum anyone can put into a 401k per year is $58,000. And that $58,000 on its face, to you, it might sound like that's too much, because we're more familiar with the deferral amounts that are allowed to be put into a 401k per year. But there are four sources from where money can be put into a 401k. The first, as I just mentioned, are pre-tax salary deferrals. And again, this is the one we're most familiar with. And those deferrals max out at $19,500 per year for clients under the age of 50, and then an additional $6,500 for clients over the age of 50. So that would give you $26,000 total for clients over the age of 50. The second most common source to make a contribution to a 401k comes from the employer contributions, either employer matches or profit sharing contributions. The third one, and this is probably the one you're least familiar with, this would be forfeitures from other plan participants. So if you're a participant in if your client is a participant in a large 401k plan from a large employer, there are going to be employees that come in and out of that plan each year. And for those employer contributions, there's typically a vesting period before each plan participant is fully vested from that employer match. So if plan participants leave before they are fully vested, whatever amount was not vested does not go back to the employer. It's spread up equally among the other plan participants. And then finally, the engine of the mega backdoor Roth conversion is after-tax salary deferrals. So whatever the difference is between $58,000 and whatever's put in from these first three funding sources can be put in as an after-tax salary deferral if the plan allows for it. So let's walk through an example to show you exactly how this works. So we have an employee here. They're a high net worth earner, and they maximize their pre-tax, and they're younger than 50. They maximize their pre-tax 401k contribution of $19,500. They also get a $5,000 profit share from their employer, and they also got $1,000 in plan disbursements from forfeitures. So this gives them a total of $25,500 in total pre-tax contributions. This employer allows for after-tax contributions, and this employee decides to make an after-tax contribution to maximize their 401k limit for the year of $32,500. So that gets them up to the max limit of $58,000. Now, there was an IRS notice about 8 years ago that allows for bifurcation of funds inside of a 401k. And what that means is the 401k plan administrator simply does some bookkeeping and accounts for pre-tax contributions versus after-tax contributions. And this IRS notice went on to say that pre-tax contributions can be rolled over to a traditional IRA, and after-tax contributions can be rolled over to a Roth IRA. So the same assets inside of one 401k plan can be rolled out into different types of IRAs based on their tax treatment. So following our example from before, that client or that employee, if they're a client of yours, they can take that $32,500 that they made in an after-tax contribution and immediately roll that out into a Roth IRA that's under your management. That $25,500 that was pre-tax contributions, they have two options with that. One is they can keep it in the 401k, which is most likely what they will do. They also have the option to roll it over into a traditional IRA. But what we really want to focus on is the left-hand side of the screen and that after-tax contribution, the ability to roll that over into a 401k under your management. There are some prerequisites that we need to address to make sure that we can do this plan, do this strategy. First, not all 401k plans allow for after-tax contributions. You have to have a plan that allows for after-tax contributions to attempt to do this strategy. If your client does not know whether their plan allows for it, they can reach out to their HR department, or if you get their summary plan description, that information should be listed in there. Second, the plan must allow for in-service withdrawals. Again, some plans do allow for this, some plans do not. And if a plan does allow for this, it's usually going to allow for it for a certain specific period of time during the year. So the plan documents are going to say from July 1st to July 31st every year, a plan participant can do an in-service withdrawal and roll money out into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And again, if your client does not know the answer to that, check with their HR department. And then third, this really is a strategy for high net worth earners, because first of all, your clients have to be maximizing all of their pre-tax contributions before they can take a look at doing after-tax contributions. So to wrap up here, a couple things to keep in mind. The backdoor Roth IRA conversions can be a valuable long-term tax planning strategy if your client can afford to do it, meaning they're high net worth and they can afford to be making very significant contributions to their qualified plan each year, as this can create a Roth IRA very tax efficiently. And to take it back to our example earlier, if your client can roll out $32,500 per year, it only takes 3 years of them doing that before you're at about $100,000 that they've now moved under your management in a Roth IRA. So think about how much they could do and how significant of those assets they can build under your management if they did that for a decade. And also, this is a way to get money out of qualified plans under your management that you traditionally would not have access to until clients retired or until clients switched jobs and were able to roll over an old 401k to you under your management. Conversions from a 401k after-tax contributions can grow a Roth IRA at a higher rate. And here at Delaware Life, we can help you and your clients turn that newly created Roth IRA into tax-free retirement income. So this is our contact information. I'll leave it up here on the screen for a moment. That's the number to reach our sales desk. If you have any questions on this strategy, and I'll take questions here in a moment, but if you have any questions on this or any other cases you're working on, reach out to that number and ask for the National Sales Consulting team, and they'll be able to put you in contact with us. And again, we're happy to consult with you on any cases that you're working on. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the chat.
Awesome. All right. Fantastic job. Okay, so before we dive into the questions, so just a reminder to everybody, one, Brendan, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and I will show something that I want to share. And that is this. I have well, actually, Brendan, I believe that you are the author of this white paper, if I'm not mistaken. Let's put that up there. There you are. There you are.
Correct.
Got the pre-pandemic jacket and tie on there. But we've got access to this white paper. It's a short white paper on mega backdoor Roth IRA conversions for high earners. Now, I don't want to bother everybody with it if they don't want a copy. So I'm going to ask you one more question. And that is, would you like a copy of this white paper? Would you like a copy of the mega backdoor Roth IRA white paper? yes, please, no, thank you, we'll pass. But if you go ahead and hit that, I will get a copy out to you. If you don't want a copy, well, I'm not going to darken your doorstep with it. Okay, so while we're doing that, while you're answering that question, I'm going to go ahead and it's going to just be you and me, buddy, up here on the screen. And let's dive in to some of these questions. Now, as a reminder to everybody, the chat box is public, so everybody's going to see what you type in there. The Q&A, there's a Q&A box that's private only. I see that. There's a number of questions there. So if you're feeling bashful, type it in the Q&A. I'll go ahead and ask Brendan the question. If not, use the chat. So let's dive in here. And so, one of the first questions I see here, question is, Brendan, for 401k or 403b money, do the clients need to convert it first to an IRA and then convert it to a Roth? Is it a two-step process?
No, for this strategy, the Mega Backdoor Roth IRA conversion, if the client, again, can do after-tax contributions into their plan and can do in-service withdrawals, they simply make an after-tax contribution, and then that can be rolled directly from the 401k or 403b into a Roth IRA.
Perfect. Okay, so next question. Any differentiation on how beneficiaries are treated on a Roth IRA?
The main benefit to a Roth IRA for the beneficiaries is any inheritance they would get from a Roth IRA will be tax-free to them. So that's different from a traditional IRA where they would have to pay income tax at their own individual tax rate based on how they withdraw those funds from the IRA. And it's important to remember that the beneficiary rules on or the beneficiary withdrawal rules for both traditional and Roth IRAs have changed as of January 2020 with the Secure Act. So now beneficiaries of both traditional and Roth IRAs have really two options. One, they can take a lump sum, so they take it all out immediately, and they're taxed on that full amount in the year they withdraw it, or they can take it out over a 10-year period in any manner they see fit. So they could take it out 10% each year for 10 years. They could take it out 20% in year 1, 0% in year 2, 30% in year 3, so on and so forth, however they want to do that. Or they could wait till the end of the 10th year and take it out all at that point. Surviving spouses have the option to roll a deceased spouse IRA into their own name and continue the IRA as it was their own. But it's important to know that stretch IRAs were eliminated for the majority of beneficiaries with the Secure Act, unless you're a surviving spouse, chronically ill, disabled, or a child under the age of majority. The stretch IRA is no longer an option. But that's a long-winded answer, but back to the original question, Roth IRA distributions, no matter which option you select, are always going to be tax-free for the beneficiary.
Gotcha. What about, so speaking of things that have changed, we had the change to the RMD age, and with those changes, with the Secure Act, with different things that came out, anything grandfathered for anybody, for all intents and purposes, in particular, people who are taking RMDs before they made the age change? Any grandfathering or any changes there?
Well, since the RMD age was only increased by a year and a half, it probably doesn't affect that many, if any, people at this point. But it's also important to note that last year, 2020, because of the pandemic, Congress passed what was called the CARES Act. That was the second or third round of stimulus that Congress passed. And one of the provisions of the CARES Act was for 2020, no one had to take an RMD, whether it was traditional IRA RMD or previous stretch IRA RMDs for beneficiaries. All RMDs were told for 2020. But in terms of if you had a client who somehow fell into that very narrow band of being 70 and a half in 2019, they would be able to have delayed their first RMD until age 72.
Okay. Okay. Lots of fun. Whenever there's changes, it's always opens up a can of worms. All right, let's go to the next question here, and keep them coming. I just was typing a response to somebody there. Yes, we are recording, by the way, so we've got this. We'll get out to you for reference. Let's see here. Let's look through here. Must the rollover be done every year? On that, illustrated is the rollover of a single year's contribution. Must this rollover be done every year? So I think they're referring back to your slide. But when somebody wants to do this conversion, are they doing it on a yearly basis? Can it be set up to be done automatically? I think that's where that question's going.
Sure. They do not have to do it on a yearly basis. They can allow those after-tax contributions to build up inside the 401k. Why I say do it on a yearly basis, because it makes the most sense for you as the financial professional. It makes sense to get it onto your book of business and your management as quickly as possible. And that's not just for your bottom line. That's because we're all familiar with 401k plans, and we're all familiar with the sometimes limited menu of options, investment options they have on that. Once we get it under our management as a Roth IRA, or once a client retires and we roll over the full 401k amount into a traditional IRA, then we can open it up to the full world of investment options, whether that's different types of securities or particularly for our business, annuity options.
Okay, clarification question here. Is the $32,500 the max amount they can contribute into the after-tax contributions?
No, it's not. That was just an example I used to illustrate how powerful this strategy could be. If you remember the slide, the client maxed out their $19,500 pre-tax deferral, and then hypothetically they got a $5,000 match from their employer, and hypothetically they got a $1,000 forfeiture contribution from plan participants who left. So the maximum amount they could potentially be able to do in after-tax contributions would be $58,000 minus $19,500, assuming there was no employer match and no forfeitures.
It's a good question. You can really see as you look at this, and as I'm glancing back on my other screen at the slides, you really do need to know and be educated on what you're doing here, because this is we're getting technical.
Yes, this is very technical. Qualified plan rules are as technical as it gets in the retirement industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's a question regarding most in-service transfer/withdrawals from 401k that this person has seen. The employee has to be over 59 and a half. Is it possible for in-service withdrawals to be done prior to 59 and a half?
It is. Again, it depends on the rules of the plan. So I would agree that most times, most plans, if they're going to allow for an in-service withdrawal or rollover, it will be at 59 and a half or older. But there are some companies, some plans out there that allow it at 55 or allow it at 50. It's certainly worth asking the question. And you're probably going to see lower ages at larger institutions that have some higher net worth earners. And a place that makes a lot of sense is actually hospitals, because you have doctors on staff there who earn several $100,000, $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they want to maximize what they're able to put away into a 403b, for example. But an excellent way to try to build up your knowledge base on this in your area is to have your clients who work for different large employers ask their HR departments, just so you can kind of build a library of what firms and what companies do allow for this and what companies do not.
Perfect. Question, what about 457 money?
So 457s, if it is a governmental 457 plan that is a qualified plan, I believe those are 457B plans, then yes, because those are governed under ERISA laws. But you're running a lot of 457 plans are non-qualified plans. and those are essentially supplemental plans to 401ks for very, very high net worth earners who are looking to do deferred comp plans. So this does not apply to those.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Interesting question. Can an after-tax plan contribution come? And I think I know the answer here, but can an after-tax plan contribution come from personal savings rather than W-2 income?
No, it has to come from a deferral from your salary from the employer.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Well, let's go back to looking through some questions, making sure we aren't doubling up. Here's a fun one for you. Mitt Romney has over $100 million in a Roth. How did he do that?
That I couldn't. I'm not a CPA. I couldn't answer that question. The good thing about Roths is they grow without any tax drag as well. So if Mitt's in his 70s now, if he had started putting money into a Roth IRA when Roth IRAs were created in the 90s, maybe, and he ran a hedge fund, so maybe he had some very good investment returns.
Some good investments. Let's see. Question here. Can you clarify this? And I know you're running on a high level. What happens if you don't roll the after-tax contribution into a Roth? What ends up happening? Does that come out as ordinary income? The earnings that were made while in the 401k, will those now come out as ordinary income, or will they come out differently?
So the earnings on any after-tax contributions would be ordinary income. They would get kind of moved over to the tax-deferred side of that bucket. But the after-tax contributions themselves, that's what can be rolled over directly to a Roth.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll grab one more question here for sake of time. I want to remind everybody, thanks for coming out. This is a great topic because, wherever you stand politically, it doesn't even necessarily matter here because there's just lots of things that we're having to take care of. And by lots of things we're having to take care of, I mean we the people. And when that happens, that we've got to raise money to pay for it. That comes in the form of taxes. And this is an opportunity to provide our clients with some shelter from the storm. And being educated and being knowledgeable is something that we can do, and then we can differentiate ourselves from our competition. Now, again, I'm going to be getting out, for those of you that wanted a copy of the white paper that Brendan had put together, I will get that sent out to you. Just say yes in the Q&A. I'll get that sent to you. If you said no, don't want to bother you with it. And then I am recording today, so there'll be a link where you can access and refer back to today's presentation. All right, let's take one last question. And our last question, let's see here. So maybe we'll take more than one. If a plan doesn't allow in-service withdrawals, how can I get money out of my 401k if I'm only 48? Very specific question. Someone's got something in mind.
It's extremely hard, if not impossible. You could do it through a loan. You could, which is not what you're trying to do, which is not the objective there. You could try to apply for a hardship withdrawal if you had something that qualifies for that. But if the plan doesn't allow for an in-service withdrawal, then this strategy that we talked about today is not going to work.
In fact, the only way I could think of in that scenario that you could get your money out if you needed it out would be you'd probably have to quit, wouldn't you?
Quit. That's the easiest answer. Quit or retire.
Not the best, but it is one there. I tell you what, I think that was a good one to wrap on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out today. And I do want to say, I'll put up a different slide here. And I want to say that we face a ton of challenges out there. And one of the things that departments like Brendan's, the advanced sales teams do, is they take a look at the challenges, the headwinds that we're facing, and they see them as opportunities. And their job is to break it down, show us those opportunities so that we can provide our clients, the consumer, with the answers that they need. That's what we do here at Creative One as well. We look at challenges, we see opportunities, and we are here to help you whether it's education or whether it's getting in front of more people. If you have any questions, if you want to find out more about this, let me know. You can reach out to your sales teams here at Creative at 800-992-2642. We can put you in touch with Brendan and his team. Again, I'm going to get that white paper out. We're going to continue to have these kind of higher level discussions because there are changes that are going on out there that you need to know about. Now, with that being said, on behalf of Brendan, thank you so much for being here. On behalf of Delaware Life, we thank them for providing access to Brendan in this great presentation. And I say thank you to you on behalf of Creative One for taking time out of your busy day to be here. With that being said, let's go out into the world. Let's go sell something and help people. So be safe. Thank you. That ends today's presentation.